If you have older siblings, you know they can be a handful. But can you imagine them being responsible for your entire future, down to the moment and the person to whom you say, I do? Welcome to Alston Stories audiobook-style read-along with analysis and commentary. We've learned about our female lead and her would-be suitor. In this installment, we learn about the man who stands between them.
Simon raked a hand through his dark hair. He knew he was supposed to cherish his birthright and display unwavering pride in the Bassett family's illustrious history, but the truth was it all made him sick inside. He'd spent his entire life not living up to his father's expectations. It seemed ridiculous now to try to live up to his name. "It's a damned burden is what it is," he finally grumbled. "You'd best get used to it," Anthony said pragmatically, "because that's what everyone will call you." Simon knew it was true, but he doubted if the title would ever sit well upon his shoulders. "Well, whatever the case," Anthony added, respecting his friend's privacy by not delving further into what was obviously an uncomfortable topic, "I'm glad to have you back. I might finally get some peace next time I escort my cousin to a ball." Simon leaned back, crossing his long, muscular legs at the ankles. "An intriguing remark." Anthony raised a brow. "One that you're certain I'll explain?" "But of course. I ought to let you learn for yourself, but then, I've never been a cruel man." Simon chuckled. "This coming from the man who dunked my head in a chamber pot?" Anthony waved his hand dismissively. "I was young. And now you're a model of mature decorum and respectability?" Anthony grinned. "Absolutely. So tell me," Simon drawled, "how exactly am I meant to make your existence that much more peaceful? I assume you plan to take your place in society?" "You assume incorrectly. But you are planning to attend Lady Danbury's ball this week," Anthony said. "Only because I am inexplicably fond of the old woman. She says what she means, and—" Simon's eyes grew somewhat shuttered. "And?" Anthony prompted. Simon gave his head a little shake. "It's nothing. Just that she was rather kind to me as a child. I spent a few school holidays at her house with Riverdale. Her nephew, you know." Anthony nodded once. "I see. So you have no intention of entering society. I'm impressed by your resolve, but allow me to warn you, even if you do not choose to attend the Ton's events, they will find you." Simon, who had chosen that moment to take a sip of his brandy, choked on the spirit at the look on Anthony's face when he said, "They." After a few moments of coughing and sputtering, he finally managed to say, "Who, pray tell, are they?" Anthony shuddered. "Mothers. Not having had one myself, I can't say I grasp your point. Society mothers, you dolt. Those fire-breathing dragons with daughters of, God help us, marriageable age. You can run, but you'll never manage to hide from them. And I should warn you, my own is the worst of the lot." Good God, and here I thought Africa was dangerous. Anthony shot his friend a faintly pitying look. "They will hunt you down. You will find yourself trapped in conversation with a pale young lady all dressed in white, who cannot converse on topics other than the weather, who received vouchers to Almack's and hair ribbons." A look of amusement crossed Simon's features. "I take it then that during my time abroad, you have become something of an eligible gentleman." "Not out of any aspirations to the role on my part, I assure you. If it were up to me, I'd avoid society functions like the plague. But my sister made her bow last year, and I'm forced to escort her from time to time." "Daphne, you mean?" Anthony looked up in surprise. "Did the two of you ever meet?" "No," Simon admitted, "but I remember her letters to you at school, and I recalled that she was fourth in the family, so she had to start with D."
Anthony jokes his way through talk of his responsibilities, but at just 18 years of age, he inherited much more than a title. When his father suddenly died, he became Viscount, which meant he was now the sole income source for a household of 9, the manager of tenants and land, and father to his youngest siblings almost overnight. He was a boy doing the job meant for a man, when he barely had time to learn from the man that came before him. Yet across these books, while there are times he expresses the weight of what he has to carry, he has never treated it as a burden or shifted it to anyone under his care. In an era where women are typically treated like a burden to offload, Anthony gives his sister a choice. He respects that choice when she makes it, and he offers to take on any part that would make her uncomfortable, or do what would make things easier for her. When Simon acts impressed, Anthony waves it off, because why wouldn't he honor and respect the women in his home? And you can see that he does when you pay attention to how he speaks about them. Throughout the books, he shows that because something is hard doesn't mean it's unwanted, that you can be tough without being controlling, and maybe most notably, because you're doing something imperfectly doesn't mean you're not doing it well. He is one of the most remarkable characters across all 8 books. This is just one very small but very noteworthy side of him.
Ah, yes, Anthony said with a slight roll of his eyes. The Bridgerton method of naming children. Guaranteed to make certain no one forgets who you are. Simon laughed. It worked, didn't it? Say, Simon, Anthony suddenly said, leaning forward, I've promised my mother I'll have dinner at Bridgerton House later this week with the family. Why don't you join me? Simon raised a dark brow. Didn't you just warn me about society mothers and debutante daughters? Anthony laughed. I'll put my mother on her best behavior. And don't worry about Daff. She's the exception that proves the rule. You'll like her immensely. Simon narrowed his eyes. Was Anthony playing matchmaker? He couldn't tell. As if Anthony were reading his thoughts, he laughed. Good God, you don't think I'm trying to pair you off with Daphne, do you? Simon said nothing. You would never suit. You're a bit too brooding for her tastes. Simon thought that an odd comment, but instead chose to ask, has she had any offers then? A few. Anthony kicked back the rest of his brandy, then let out a satisfied exhale. I've allowed her to refuse them all. That's rather indulgent of you. Anthony shrugged. Love is probably too much to hope for in a marriage these days, but I don't see why she shouldn't be happy with her husband. We've had offers from one man old enough to be her father, another old enough to be her father's younger brother, one who was rather too high in the instep for our often boisterous clan, and then this week, dear God, that was the worst. What happened? Simon asked curiously. Anthony gave his temples a weary rub. This last one was perfectly amiable, but a rather bit dim in the head. You'd think after our rakish days, I'd be completely without feelings. Really? Simon asked with a devilish grin. You'd think that? Anthony scowled at him. I didn't particularly enjoy breaking this poor fool's heart. Wasn't Daphne the one to do that? Yes, but I had to tell him. Not many brothers would allow their sister such latitude with their marriage proposals, Simon said quietly. Anthony just shrugged again, as if he couldn't imagine treating his sister in any other way. She's been a good sister to me. It's the least I can do. Even if it means escorting her to Almax? Simon said wickedly. Anthony groaned. Even then. I'd console you by pointing out that this will all be over soon, but you've what? 3 other sisters waiting in the wings? Anthony positively slumped in his seat. Eloise is due out in 2 years, and Francesca the year after that. But then I've a bit of a reprieve before Hyacinth comes of age. Simon chuckled. I don't envy you your responsibilities in that quarter. But even as he said the words, he felt a strange longing, and he wondered what it would be like to be not quite so alone in this world. He had no plans to start a family of his own, but maybe if he'd had one to begin with, his life would have turned out a bit differently. So, you'll come for supper then? Anthony stood. Informal, of course. We never take meals formally when it's just family. Simon had a dozen things to do in the next few days, but before he could remind himself that he needed to get his affairs in order, he heard himself saying, I'd be delighted. Excellent. And I'll see you at the Danbury Bash first? Simon shuddered. Not if I can help it. My aim is to be in and out in under 30 minutes. You really think, Anthony said, raising a doubtful brow, that you're going to be able to go to the party, pay your respects to Lady Danbury, and leave? Simon's nod was forceful and direct, but Anthony's snort of laughter was not terribly reassuring.
That's a wrap. How does the old way of things compare to how we do things now? Personally, I like my independence, but there is something to be said about having someone in your life take control and have your back. I think it boils down to how the person you give authority in your life exercises it. And if they do it with your best interest in mind, I have no issue with them having it. But tell me how you feel in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, we have The Duke and I linked in the description below. Until next time, happy reading.